In this video, we're going to see how we can set up a Unity project, manage a Unity project, import packages to our Unity project, and how we can export our Unity games so we can turn them in for assignments. So first things first, why don't we see how we can create a nice organized folder structure so we can keep track of all of our work that we do within our chapter and in our Unity project. So I'm going to move this over. And for right now, I'm just going to create a folder on my desktop. And you probably already have a folder called SGD. If not, this folder will be the folder that you'll probably house all of your classes in. So next, I'm going to create inside of this SGD folder, I'm going to create SGD 113. And this will be my Programming 1 class. And in fact, I can go in there and be more specific, Programming 1. And in here, I'm going to create a new folder for the chapter. So let's go chapter 1. And now we have a nice organized folder hierarchy where we can find all of our work. And in chapter 1, this is where we're going to create our Unity project. So with our folder hierarchy made, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this Windows screen. And I'm going to go ahead and open up Unity. This will be the project folder or the window that you'll see opening up as soon as you open up Unity through Windows. What we're going to do is we're going to next click on the New button in the top right-hand corner. So we open that up, and we have a few things we got to do right here. The first is we got to give our project a name. So since this is Chapter 1, we'll call it Chapter 01, Unity Assignment, something along those lines. Chapter, basically you want to know what chapter you're in, and then you can call it Unity Game, Unity Assignment, whatever you have you. Next, we got to make sure that our 3D button is clicked. We don't want to be in 2D, we want to be in 3D. Next, we're going to find the location in which we're going to store our Unity Game project for our Chapter 1 assignment. So I'm going to click this little ellipsis, and I'm going to navigate to wherever my SGD folder was. Then I'm going to go to my programming class, then I'm going to go to Chapter 1, and after I click Chapter 1, I'm just going to select Chapter 1 to be the folder that I'm going to keep it in. So you can see that I have, it was stored originally on my desktop. That's my SGD folder. And then my SGD class, Programming 1. And then Chapter 1 is where we're going to store my game project. So next I'm going to click on Create Project. Unity is going to do its thinking, setting it up for us. And now we have a brand new game project. So why don't we see what happened in that folder that we created this game project in. So I'll click on my Chapter 1. Well, let's go back to my root. There's my SGD folder. Let's go to my Programming 1 class, Chapter 1. And now you can see I have a new folder called Chapter 01 Unity Assignment. And inside of it, Unity has created an assets folder, some library stuff, just a bunch of different documents and folders and files that help Unity keep track of everything going on in the game. So, rule of thumb that we'll get to in a second, we're not going to touch any of these folders anymore. We were just making sure that we knew what Unity was doing whenever it created our game project. And now that we have our Unity game project made, we're going to go ahead. The first thing I always do whenever I create a brand new empty project is I like to go to my project folder right here. And you can see I have an assets list right there. And inside this blank assets window, I'm going to right click and go to create. And we're going to create some empty folders. And to speed up this process, I'm going to select this new folder and hit Control and D for duplicate a few times, just so I can start populating my assets window with some folders. And from here, I'm going to name them the folders that we're always going to be using throughout all of our projects. So materials, this folder will keep all the materials that describe what kind of texture our game has, or our models will have in our game. Meshes will actually hold the FBXs and OBJs of our models we create in Maya. Prefabs will hold what we call prefabs in Unity, and if you don't know what those are, you'll soon find out. I won't take the time to explain them now, but they are very important. Then I like to create a folder called prototypes. So if I need to kind of just mess around with an idea and I'm not quite sure if it'll be implemented into my game or my assignment, I can mess around in just a kind of a miscellaneous folder I like to call prototypes. The next folder we'll call scenes. This is much like the Maya scenes you're used to dealing with. It's going to hold our levels for our game. This folder is going to hold all of the scripts we write for our games. Sounds will hold all the sound effects and music for our game. And then textures will hold all the, I don't know, JPEGs or PNGs of the game textures that we will create in Photoshop. I'm going to create one more folder I didn't duplicate enough, and I'm going to call this VFX. I like to store particle systems and visual effects, so VFX for short. All right, so hopefully you guys will always have your assets folders and asset window looking like this. I know that a lot of the packages you'll download from me have the exact same layout, so you'll get used to it. So that's the first thing I always do after opening up a brand new Unity project is to create my workspace and my asset folders like so. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into importing packages into Unity. Some chapters may have requirements of, let's say, maybe importing some assets or some textures or some models, anything that goes along with the outline of the assignment that I give you. And I'll give an example of an older class. I'll bring in Moodle right here. And you'll pretty much get used to this kind of layout. And you'll see a little section in pretty much every chapter called downloadable resources. And more specifically, if it's a programming type class, the downloadable resource could be a Unity package. So what we'll do is we'll click here to download the resources needed for this assignment. Pretty self-explanatory. And I host all of my downloadable assets through Google Drive. So this is the Google Drive download screen that you'll be seeing a lot from me. And the way to get this, I mean, it's very confusing. Just a bunch of folders with random numerical and letters in them. It's just weird. So we're going to ignore all this. What we really want to go to is this little arrow in the top right-hand corner. Hopefully, if you might be using a different version of a different web browser or if Google Drive updates, hopefully this little arrow will always be there because it's all we need to do to click on to download my entire package that I have for that assignment. So as you can see, Windows is downloading this asset folder. I've called it Chapter 03 Assets just for an example. I know I called everything Chapter 1, but in this particular example, I was able to get a hold of a really small package for Programming 1 Chapter 3. So I've downloaded my Unity package. What do I do now? How do I get this inside of Unity? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Unity and we're going to right click. See our little project window down here? We're going to right click on Assets. We're going to go to Import Package and we're going to click on Custom Package. Okay. And here we can navigate to downloads, for instance, and there's that Chapter 3 Assets package that I just downloaded. And we're simply going to highlight it and click Open. And then this little window will come up and it kind of shows you all the different assets and scripts and whatnot that you'll be importing. Pretty much for the most part, always click All and just click Import. So after a little bit, Unity will import. Oh, and we're done. But what happened? Did anything happen? Well, since I've already set up my asset folders in the manner that I always end up using, we can see that now my textures folder is populated with some textures. And if I double click on those, I can get a little preview either through Photoshop or through whatever photo viewer you're currently using on your computer. And those are my textures. I even have a script that controls bullet movement that's been imported. I even have some prefabs I made. Here is the medium fighter model that we imported, like so. And I even have a material that you can get a preview for over here in our inspector. So that's how we import the custom packages that I will be requiring you to download from time to time in certain assignments. Other packages that you may need to import from time to time include some built-in packages that Unity has already rolled up for you. They're not installed or imported into your projects by default because you may not always need these different tools that come from these packages. So, for example, there's a first-person controller package that allows you to walk inside of levels like in a typical first-person shooter type situation. It's a very handy tool to get just really quick into the levels you're making to preview how they fill out in a real-time setting. So why don't we go ahead and see how we can import packages that are already pre-rolled up inside of Unity itself. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click on assets and go to import package. But instead of doing custom package, we can see I have a multitude of different packages here for everything from camera tools to particle systems that Unity has already kind of programmed up for you, such as fire and gas type effects, just different things of that nature. But let's go ahead and do that first person character controller, and that's going to be under characters. You'll notice it's a pretty big one, and this comes from with everything from footstep sound effects to first person or third person type controls, and even a roller ball control. So it's not just for first person, but the first person controller is what we'll be using quite a bit to preview different levels we may build in like level design 1 or sometimes even in some programming assignments. So I'm going to go ahead and just import it all. Remember, for the most part, you're always going to just select import all when going to your packages. So it's just bringing in a bunch of different assets. And you'll notice something right off the bat whenever it finishes. We have a new folder between our sounds folder we made and our textures folder that we made. We now have a new folder called standard assets and a new folder called editor that kind of controls some of the back end stuff in our game. These are going to be fine. They can exist with our pre-made or our user-made folders just no big deal. So I'll click on standard assets and then I have a bunch of different things to select. So we'll go to characters again. And then we have our first person character, our rollerball, and a third person character. This first person character is what we want to use. And they already have a nice prefab of a first person FPS controller that all we have to do is just click and drag it into our hierarchy. And then maybe I can create a plane for him to maybe sit on. Let me just position him up a little bit. Now, if I hit play, I can now walk around this floating platform in the sky. And of course, I know you're all rooting for me to do it, and I'm just going to jump off. And since I'm just falling infinitely, it doesn't look like it because I have no point of reference. And the platform above me is just it just disappeared because Unity only renders one side of a polygon. So at this point, I've basically just I've fallen off. I hit Control P to stop that. So that's a way where we can, import some custom packages and tools that are included inside of Unity to make our development time even easier. I know the first-person controller one is something I use quite often myself. So now that we've got some assets and packages imported into Unity, let's take a look at behind the scenes of what's going on in our file systems and our file structures. I just want to go ahead and say this for right off the bat. You have two ways of messing with assets inside your game. You can do it through Unity in your assets folder right here, your assets window, or you can bring up your actual Windows screen. And here's my game files that we saw earlier. And if I go to assets, don't these folders look familiar? These are the folders we just created. You can even see my medium fighter FBX, which is my actual mesh that I exported from Maya. And here's some of my textures. I can even right click them and there they are. So these are my actual assets that exist inside of my game project. Never mess with these folders outside of Unity. All right. Don't go in and rename anything. So don't come in here and be like, I don't like that underscore. Boom. Don't do that. In fact, I'm going to hit escape. Don't rename things. Don't move things in between different folders. Don't delete things. Rule of thumb is just never mess with your assets outside of Unity. So I'm just going to close that out. I never really need to get into that folder because all the changes I make inside of my Unity project, they'll take care of those files for me. And the reason we do that is because behind the scenes, every time you name an object or move it to a new folder, Unity creates these little hidden files called meta files, and it kind of keeps track of where everything's located. So if you make changes to maybe your models outside of Unity, inside of that folder we were like a Windows folder, then you go back into Unity and it may not know exactly where that file went because the meta file was never updated inside of Unity. That's a little bit of a technical explanation behind that. All you need to know is only edit, rename, delete, move things inside of our project window inside of Unity. So let's talk for a minute about how we can save our work inside of Unity, and then we'll hit on how we can actually turn in assignments that we create in Unity. Unity is a little bit different with saving things. For the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. If we go to File, we can go to Save Scene and Save Scene As, just like in Maya or any other type of, I don't know, program that uses scenes. Maya is the closest relative here to use as an example. So I'm going to click Save Scene As, and I'm going to navigate to my Scenes folder. This is the exact reason why we made that folder. And I'll call this Example Scene, and I'll save it. So now when we navigate to my scenes folder over here in my project window down here, let me just minimize that. You can see I have an example scene here. All right. So let's talk about how we can save our project and our scenes so I know exactly what to grade whenever you're turning in your Maya stuff. So there's going to be plenty of scenes here. So whenever you save your scene, your final scene, the one that has everything built just the way you want it, call it something like final scene, something like that. So I don't get lost between which scene you want me to grade. So anything with the word final in it is probably what I'm going to grade. Also, you might have noticed that we have another little save button here called Save Project. Save Project and Save Scene might be a little bit confusing at first, but think of Save Scene as saving the current level inside of your little editor here, inside your scene view editor here. This saving scene saves the level. All right, so we'll just do a quick save scene. While Save Project kind of saves where textures are located, if you've renamed anything, basically any changes outside of our scene view are saved whenever we go to Save Project. So whenever you're about to turn in your work, do a Save As, go to your Scenes folder, make sure your scene you want me to grade is called something like Final Scene. We'll save it, and then click Save Project. And that's basically how we'll save stuff inside of Unity. So after you've saved your scene and saved your project, let's do that just one more time just to double check. Save scene, save project. I'm going to actually close out Unity to prepare it for turn in inside of Moodle. So everything's just like I want it. So I'll go ahead and just X out of Unity. I'll minimize that. And then I'm going to navigate to my SGD folder that we made. I'm going to go to my programming class. I'm going to go to chapter 1, Unity assignment. Okay, I went too far. Here's my assets, library, project settings, all that good stuff. So what I want to do is I want to go back to 1. And this is the folder that we created when we first made our project at the beginning of the video. This is actually what you need to turn in to me. I need to be able to access all of your assets, your library folder, your project settings, and any other kind of files that Unity creates. So what we'll do is we'll go back 1. So remember, this is our chapter 1, and inside of our chapter 1, we have our Unity project. In fact, why don't we call, well, can't name it. Probably should leave it the same name. Remember, we shouldn't mess with Unity files outside of Unity. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this parent game folder for our chapter 1 assignment, and I'm going to right click on it. And if you have something like 7-zip or WinZip and you know how to zip files, you can go ahead and do it. But anybody else that just doesn't really zip stuff, there's a really easy way to do it. We right click on the folder we want to compress and zip. We select send to, and then we select compressed zip folder. Windows will go ahead and zip it up for us. And now we have a nice zipped file that you can actually upload to Moodle. The reason we have to do this is because Moodle does not accept just open folders like this. It only accepts single files. So by zipping up our Unity assignment, not only do we make it a little bit smaller so it's a little bit faster to upload and download, but it creates a single file that Moodle will accept, and now have access to everything inside your project folder. The last thing we're going to do here is we're going to rename it to a logical naming convention. So the logical naming convention that I'll only take as last name underscore first name underscore the chapter underscore the class. All right. If I don't see a naming convention exactly like this with last name, first name, chapter, and class, I just won't grade it, and I'll let you know that I had some ones that weren't named quite correctly. So it'll be up to you to make sure that you go back and name it correctly, and during that time, your project will be counted late. So, stickler on naming conventions, but anywhere you go to work in the industry, you better believe they will be too. And we'll get into that into later classes in the program about why that is. So all you got to know is that I'm very strict on naming conventions. If you don't name it, first of all, I may not know what to grade for you. Second of all, you're just shooting yourself in the foot by not getting used to strict naming conventions inside of project type settings. And then we're just going to go to Moodle and upload it. So I'll navigate back to Moodle, and I'll scroll down in the chapter to the assignment, and I'm just picking a random assignment here. And then we're going to go to add submission at the bottom of this assignment module, add submission, and then it's going to ask us to drop a file here. We can do a few things here. The easiest thing is just probably to click inside this little arrow area and then choose the file you want to upload. So we'll just have to navigate to where we saved our zipped game project with the correct naming convention. We'll go to open, and you don't have to save it as anything. I think the naming, if you delete that blank, it'll just use the naming convention that I want you to use anyway. Oh, let me redo that. And then we'll just upload this file. Moodle will think and hopefully not do anything weird. I'll pause this video as it uploads. So I'm back, and that took about 2.5 minutes to upload. And now you can see that I have a little icon here with my name, and everything looks like it's good. And we'll just go to save changes. And now if we scroll down to the bottom, we have a submission status saying submitted for grading. It's not being graded yet. And we can see our file submissions right here. And if you have any comments to make, like I had trouble with this one part, I couldn't get it working, have mercy on my soul. You can type something like, I did bad, give me A's. I mean, that's about the best argument you can make to just get good grades, I guess. So we'll save that comment. I did bad, give me A's. And then you got your correct naming convention done. And then I guess we're good here. If you need to go back in and resubmit something, just go down here to your edit submission. And then you can right click on click on this. You can delete it, update it, or re-download it like you lost it. Well, guess what? You have like a little hard copy of it. If you want to download it, you can get it back. So never fear with that. So Moodle's pretty nice in that regard. It's like a little file, like a little, I don't know, Google Drive or Dropbox little thing where you can go back and download old assignments. Anyway, I'll quit babbling, and I don't want to make any changes, but you can re-upload. And I don't keep keep you guys out of resubmitting things. You can resubmit as many times as you want to before the due date, and if you want to make corrections after a due date to get some points back, you can also do that. And if you did bad, I won't give you A's. Anyway, that's pretty much the video. That's how we can set up Unity projects and get them turned in with the least amount of fuss and make your instructor happy. Thanks, guys.